Hey everyone, so in this video I wanted to go through the concept of liquidity and volume and why those two words or characteristics of a marketplace are extremely important for an NFT investor, especially at this stage of the NFT game. Okay, the NFT world or the NFT niche umbrella under crypto is very, very small compared to the overall cryptocurrency kind of scene. Because it's so small, when you put your money in there, it's kind of considered a very high risk investment because you're putting your money into something that you don't know if you can cash it out. At least with coins, you know that if you want to cash it out, you can just chuck it on the marketplace for the current exchange value, and hopefully someone will buy it. But with NFTs, a lot of the times there's some really cool projects that open up pre-sales, and people go wild investing into those pre-sales, only to see that once the project ends up finishing up its pre-sale, it launches the marketplace and volume dries up, and suddenly the items that you've bought, maybe you put about 20 to 30 Ethereum in there to buy those items, and you just can't cash them out because the volume is so slow or so low, maybe like 1 Ethereum worth of products are being sold a day, that if you were to sell your 30 Ethereum worth, the spread would be so big that you'd probably dump on the market. It had to have a very big effect. And that's why a volume actually tells you how absorbent a NFT marketplace is. So for example, you have here Decentraland, Gods Unchained, My Crypto Heroes, Crypto Voxels, Striking, a lot of these top projects currently, they're showing a lot of volume. So Gods Unchained specifically, if I have about 50 Ethereum worth of cards that I want to get rid of, I can rest assured that within a week or two at least I can get rid of my investment, get my 50 Ethereum back, probably a lot quicker than that. And not really affect the market too much because the overall market cap is good. The volume is there to absorb that really quickly. Same thing with Decentraland, which is why I feel it's one of the best projects, just because the liquidity is so good that the frequency of sales is just so good that even if you're a large scale investor with like hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, you can sell and not affect the prices that much, and the market is there to absorb it, right? Same thing with liquidity. Also tells you, buy volume also tells you how kind of quickly the asset is going to increase in value. So I'm talking about volume apart from the pre-sale phase. At the pre-sale phase, you probably see a lot of volume. It's very normal to see heaps of people chuck money at these assets just because they only have a 1 week or a 2 week window to do so, and more time, the chances are that the projects, they incentivize early investors. So you're going to see these spikes in volume, especially with in OpenSea. I think Striking is having a pre-sale at the moment. That's why the volume's going nuts. I think Crypto Voxels is having a similar thing. I know Super Rare is blowing up. So a few of these projects are actually in pre-sale mode, so that's why they're going crazy. But past the pre-sale mode stage, are they 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year into releasing their marketplace, are they having consistent buy volume? That's a very interesting aspect to see. So if you want to do this on a small term basis, when you want to put $100 here and $100 there, then this volume thing doesn't really matter too much. It's not too much of a big deal. But if you have hundreds of thousands of US dollars, $500,000 invested, it's just like if you had, say, 50,000 BTC. If you wanted to sell that 50,000 BTC, you better believe the market's going to dump a little bit, just because you have a lot of money. You're liquidating tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into the market, right? So it's going to affect the order book. It's going to affect the buyers and sellers because you just have a lot of assets to get rid of. So if you're a larger scale, you got to make sure that you're investing in high liquid markets so it can absorb your buys and sells on a large scale. I'll give you an example. This is not because it's a bad project. It's just because of it had a recent pre-sale. But the Sandbox, they actually raised about 600 Ethereum or so in their pre-sale. They sold a bunch of their land. I think they sold about 3,000 units of their land. And you can buy and sell different items in the game, etc. And they did really well in the pre-sale. 600 Ethereum, pretty good for this kind of a crypto climate where funding is quite difficult for crypto projects, just because a lot of interest is lost. Altcoins give you a really good indication. The prices of altcoins show you that the level of interest has dropped significantly since 2017 highs. But there is definitely interest from crypto believers, and raising 600 Ethereum was definitely not a small thing to do. But you can see right now, since then, I think it's been a month or so since that pre-sale, maybe 2 months. Where's the volume at? The Sandbox game, 7.4 Ethereum. Not much. So say you have 50 Ethereum worth of Sandbox tokens you want to get rid of for whatever reason. Sometimes you've got bills coming up, sometimes you have a change of heart, you want to invest into something else, you can't afford it, maybe you'll buy back somewhere in the future. If you want to sell, this is 7-day volume. That means that's an average of 1 Ethereum a day of transactions happening. So if you want to sell 50 Ethereum worth, is there a market there to absorb it? If you were to list it, is there enough eyeballs watching that marketplace to say, oh yeah, I'll buy that? And do they have 50 Ethereum worth of money, liquid, ready to put in there for you? So that's the issue with, being part of a marketplace with not much buy volume at the moment. I'm sure when they release their game, this volume is going to increase. And, as an early investor, you might be rewarded. But for me, NFT trading, and the reason why I trade, and very rarely do I hold a long term unless I really believe in the project and I have some plans in the future. The reason why I do short-term flips or short-term holds is just because I understand that NFTs are definitely high risk investments. And I think everyone who's watching this series, my blog and everything, need to understand it's a very, very high risk investment. You can put your money, 15 Ethereum into 50 to 100 Ethereum into something, and 3 to 6 months down, the volume might dry up. The game might not become obsolete, but it might die down a little bit, and you might need to sell. And your assets that you put 100 Ethereum worth in there, you just can't sell it to someone. And, worst case scenario, 12 months down the track, everyone leaves the game, you just can't sell your assets. So you have these digital items or images of things that aren't worth anything at that stage. So it's important to understand liquidity because it tells you how absorbent it is to your large scale buys and sells. And if you ever want to be a whale in these games, say you want to put in 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 Ethereum, it's got to be in a liquid market. Okay, it's got to be in a market where if you make the decision to exit, there's a market there to absorb that exit, right? And if you want to make a buy, you're not inflating the prices yourself before you can, buy a good amount of assets. So again, with Gods Unchained, it's a very good example of how frequent buy volume shows you an uptrending graph, because the more rare items get. Okay, Decentraland land, there's only 45,000 there, so lands have gone from 1,000 during the auction to 7,000 for a very long time. Then it hit 10,000. Now we're sitting at 12,000 minimum. Soon it's going to be 15,000 minimum, just because there's frequent buy volume. It's just going to get more and more rare. So volume is important because of buying and selling. This is rare chests. You can see people are, buying it frequently, and I love to see a stable graph, stable growth. That's the best thing to see. This is only a month and a half, and we've seen it go from 0.09 to 0.3, as opposed to something like Lights Bidding, which is a promo card, and we had 17, each one sold for about 17 Ethereum on December 30th. Earlier on December 1st, we had some sales at about 10 to 12 Ethereum, but there's just not enough data. Whereas if you're a seller and you want to sell your Lights Bidding and you list it for say 20 Ethereum, you don't know if there's a buyer there that can absorb that, because there's not much data to point you in that direction. So for me personally, I love to invest in things that have high liquidity, high buy volume, are only going to get more and more rare, have a game that's backed by good funding, so it's not going to run out of funding anytime soon, is based on a promised kind of principle. For example, Hearthstone is a very promising, it's a big game, like 700,000 Reddit members, I believe, millions of players, I think. It's so Gods Unchained being based on a highly popular trading card game, or even just trading card games in general, is a lot more promising than a completely new concept that is trying to pioneer its own path forward, but it has a big risk in proving the concept as well. So anyway, that's that. A few words on liquidity and volume, depending on what type of scale investor you are. But those things are definitely important, and whether you realize it now or further down your NFT investing career. Those are definitely important, and apart from security of your assets, I feel it's one of the most important aspects of the game: liquidity and volume.